Good to go.
Okay, so here we've got some paint. We've got a trade paint, which is Leyland, and then we've got a regular crown. It could be Durlux, it could be home base or whatever. But with paint, basically, like I said, there's some paint that's tougher than others. One of the easiest way to establish that is to actually look at the label. So if we look here on our crown paint, we've got a number of simple pictures here, and one of them says clean with cold water. Okay, so that tells it's water-based straight away. Okay, at least you won't be able to clean it with water otherwise. Look at our trade paint, clean in white spirit. Basically that tells us this is an oil-based paint, and because there's a different curing process and it's got an oil in it that's been refined, that's going to set a lot tougher than this kind of paint. This is okay for stuff that's not going to be used much, not a lot of wear, you're not going to die on it, put cups of coffee on it and all that kind of stuff, and it'll just give you a nice attractive finish. The other thing you want to look at is the method of application on the tin. So it usually says apply with brush. Now that's because you don't expect most people, this is a retail product, to have anything like spray equipment or have any knowledge of rollers and things like that. I personally apply pretty much everything with a roller, apart from big gloss surfaces which need to be sprayed, but it's something I don't generally do. I don't like to do it because the finish is so fine with the high gloss. With spraying it, you need a lot of equipment and air extraction, things like that. So it says here apply with brush. This one, it's got roller or brush on the can. The other way to check, which is going to be best, because some paints out there are what we call self-leveling. What that means is the texture of the paint and the way that it's been developed specifically works better applying it with a brush. And the way you can tell is do a test piece. So find a bit of wood similar to what you're going to be painting, sand it off to the same level, and try the paint that you've got with a brush, and then with the roller, compare the two once you've dried, and you can be in a better position to make a decision what's going to give you the better finish. With preparation for the application of what you're going to paint, it's very important that the area's clean, dust-free, there isn't much traffic, and it's of the right temperature. Specifically when you get into different forms of paint, there's a reason why, for example, you buy a certain paint to paint outside, because it's got to be resistant to the effects of rain and frost. Painting furniture, you need to be painting around at least 15 degrees and probably up to maybe 20, because it's just not going to cure quick enough to be able to work with the surface to get a high quality finish. Another thing that's really important is your equipment. So this is my preference, and this is a synthetic roller. There will be natural fibre ones available, but they will be 4 times the price. Everything we use for painting, brushes, rollers, whatever, it has one use and then it's discarded. And that's because you can't clean it and get it back to a high quality finish with something that's been used before. But even before that, the first thing we do is clean the equipment. This is being produced in a factory. High level production, automatically goes in a packet, automatically out to the shop, automatically on the shelf. What that does not allow for is these microfibers that are attached to this roller. It's how well they're attached to the insert roller that goes onto your handle and things like that. And literally, if I put that in the light and waft it like that up and down, there'll be hundreds of fibres coming off that just now. So you need to get in the light and get as many fibres off it as possible, because if you don't, when you get your paint on it, you varnish, whatever it is, apply it to your wooden finish, those fibres will be in it, and massively, you can see them really easy when you get natural light on it, and it just makes a bit of a mess, and you have to let it dry and strip it down again. So clean your equipment as best as you can before you start for the best finish possible. So a bit about the paint, a bit about rollers. test your paint. If you've got any real doubts about your paint or your product, phone the company, ask to speak to the technical department. Quite often, people in technical departments have been trained using a product, and you can say, I'm looking to do this with it, what do you think? Or would you recommend something else? More information, the better. Things like that can help you make decisions and increase your knowledge of the products that are available to you and things like that. So, next what we're going to do is look at what we've got to achieve, and going from really dark brown to white is difficult to do. I've sanded it down, we've got a key on there. Next thing we need to do is seal the surface and provide a basis or a foundation for the top coats. Okay? We do that with what we call a primer. Personally, I use what we call a primer undercoat, and I'll apply 1 or 2 coats. The primer undercoat paint is of a different consistency to your top coat with a different purpose. That's designed to seep slowly into the surface of the wood and to seal the surface of the wood and to provide a good coat for your top coats to stick to. So get a couple of coats of primer undercoat on there, sand down between them. The reason you sand down between them, if little bits of dust, bubbles of dirt, etc. land on it, they're going to sit proud of the surface, and it'll be evident when you put your top coat on that there's something there, however minute it is. So you sand down and clean between every coat. Get your 2 primer undercoat coats on there, and then once that's dry, and you need to make sure it's 100% dry before you can sand it. You know, all of your pins, look at your drying time on them, so try and stick to them. There'll be less if it's warmer, and things like that. You can add heat to a room to accelerate things as well, but you need to be careful with things like that. Once we're all primed up, we'll sand it down. We've got a couple of coats of prime on it. You can start looking at your top coat. Again, clean your equipment first. Make sure you've got enough. If you're using a roller like I do, you need to be straight over the full piece in one movement. The full length, you don't want to be going halfway, then a third, and then the top, because those lines where you stop will be visible. 10% overlap onto the next piece, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, all the way down. Checking back into the light to get a natural light reflection off the surface to see how well it's going onto the piece. Do your full first coat, let it dry, go back the next day, and you'll see where work needs doing. For example, wood is a natural surface. It has cracks, it has grain, it has knots in it and things like that. So you're probably going to have to do some filling as well. That'll be evident between your primer undercoat and your first layer of top coat. Use a 2-pack filler, let it dry, sand it down, because what you want from this natural wood surface after it's been sanded is to try and get it as level and as flat as possible. So it looks like it's supposed to be like that. So there is some filling involved. 2-pack fillers are always the best. Sand them off, so you end up with a 1 top coat and some patches, little patches of filler and things like that. Sand it down again, and then you can start applying probably your last 2 coats. We're going to get between 4 to 6 coats in total from your primer through to your last coat. But because we're sanding them down as we go through each one, it's reducing the thickness, it's making them bind together better, and it's reducing the chance of overpainting. Because if you just keep sticking paint on, you can overpaint and it looks hideous. And you get inconsistent amounts on the surface, and it's not a uniform finish either. So it avoids overpainting. So 4 to 6 coats, and always denib and sand between coats. Use a nice soft sanding pad. They're not hard edge bits of sandpaper. The ones that are a sponge with the sandpaper on the outside are adequate, because you can sand down without the hard edges, which cause lines when you paint and the surface that you're going to finish. So that's a summary of the woodwork. The other things that we want to look at is other options.